Hey everyone, and welcome. It is September 3rd, 2025. Today, we're going to peel back the layers on the day's biggest headlines to see if we can find the one single story that connects them all. So, let's get right into it. Because, when you really start to look, all these events that seem totally separate, you got a military parade over here, a new piece of tech over there, a natural disaster somewhere else, they're not really separate at all. They're all pieces of the same puzzle. So the question is, what's the big picture? So our story really kicks off with a massive, and I mean very public display of power. We're starting in Beijing, where the stage was set to send a crystal clear message about partnership and strength. China held this huge military parade today. Now, on the surface, okay, it's about remembering history. But let's be real. In the world of geopolitics, a parade is never just a parade. It is a statement. It's a very carefully choreographed show of military muscle and, maybe even more importantly, of who your friends are. And this is where it gets really telling. The guest list. You've got Vladimir Putin from Russia, Pakistan's prime minister, and their army chief, and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. I mean, at a time when tensions with the West are incredibly high, seeing these specific leaders standing shoulder to shoulder in Beijing, that sends a signal you just can't miss. It's a picture of a new and deepening alignment. So why now? Well, the parade marks the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. And this historical context is absolutely crucial. You see, for China, the war didn't just start in 1939. No, it began way earlier, with Japan's invasion of Manchuria back in 1931. And it turned into a full-blown conflict by 1937. That history, that's the foundation for the show of strength we saw today. Okay, so that brings us to the next piece of the puzzle. Because tanks and missiles are only one part of the power game today. The other battlefield, and you could argue it's even more important, is technology. And right now, India is making a massive play for its own independence in that arena. So, say hello to the Vikram 32. This little thing is a huge deal. It's India's very first homegrown 32-bit processor chip. And it's designed to be super tough. Perfect for the crazy conditions and satellites and rockets, but also for vital defense systems. So this isn't just about a new product. This is a declaration of technological sovereignty. And you better believe there is a massive economic engine driving this. India's semiconductor market is on track to basically double, hitting over $100 billion by 2030. The Prime Minister is banking on the global market reaching over $1 trillion, and he wants India to grab a big slice of that pie. And you gotta understand, this is so much bigger than just the Vikram 32 chip. With their India semiconductor mission, the government is trying to build the entire ecosystem from the ground up, from designing the chips to manufacturing them, all the way to packaging. It's a full court press for total self-reliance. But here's the thing. This kind of huge ambition doesn't happen in a bubble. As India steps up its game, it's finding itself in the middle of a really tricky high-wire act, trying to balance its own goals between the world's biggest competing powers. So from one side, you've got some serious pressure coming from the United States. President Trump hasn't minced words, calling the trade relationship a one-sided disaster and slapping on some pretty steep tariffs. And this right here is where you really see the tightrope they're walking. On one hand, Washington is hitting New Delhi with tariffs for buying discounted Russian oil. At the very same time, Moscow is in serious talks with New Delhi to start building advanced Su-57 fighter jets inside India. So India is trying to keep deep strategic ties with both rivals, and that is a balancing act that gets harder and harder every single day. Now, while all these high-stakes games of geopolitics and technology are being played, the ground beneath our feet is, well, literally and figuratively, shaking. We need to shift gears for a minute and look at the profound human crises that are unfolding right now at this very moment. In eastern Afghanistan, a region that was already suffering from a major earthquake, another one has hit. The death toll from that first 6.0 magnitude quake has now tragically climbed past 1,400 people. Thousands of homes are gone, and rescue efforts are a desperate struggle in a remote and really difficult area. At the same time, in Sudan, an almost unthinkable tragedy. An entire village, Tarasin, has just been completely wiped off the map by a catastrophic landslide. An estimated 1,000 people are gone. And to make a horrific situation even worse, it's happening in the middle of a brutal civil war, which makes getting any large-scale help in there almost impossible. And then we have France, where a totally different kind of storm is brewing. This one is political and social. The government just proposed 44 billion euros in budget cuts, basically freezing public spending. As you can imagine, this has ignited a political firestorm with threats of a no-confidence vote and very real fears of widespread social unrest. So when you put these three events next to each other, you really start to see a pattern, don't you? Natural disasters, civil war, political chaos. It paints a picture of a world that is incredibly fragile, where thousands of lives can be turned upside down in a blink of an eye, completely separate from the grand strategies being debated in the halls of power. All right, so what does it all mean? You have a military parade in China, a tiny microchip in India, and these devastating crises happening all over the globe. Let's try to connect those dots and figure out what story today is really telling us. It seems like the story of today is about a world being pulled in three different directions all at once. First, you've got this major geopolitical realignment, where countries like China and Russia are making their partnerships very public. Second, there's this fierce race for technological power, which nations like India see as their ticket to true independence. And third, underneath it all is the constant, unavoidable reality of just how vulnerable we are to disaster and chaos. And that right there is the core tension of our time. We're living in a world defined by these grand ambitions and deep, simmering rivalries, but it's all being built on a foundation that is constantly and undeniably fragile. The push for power just keeps going, even as the ground is shaking under our feet. Which leaves us with one final and really critical question to think about. In this global race for dominance, for power, for technology, who's the one actually shouldering the risk? And who, ultimately, is paying the price for both our greatest ambitions and our most tragic failures?